Today we will talk about solving percent equations using proportions. But to be able to do that, we need to understand what the base, the whole part, the amount, the part, and the rate, the percent part, are in a basic percent problem. If we understand that, the formula is simply going to be, you're going to have a fraction on the left, which is going to be the amount on top divided by base, the whole part at the bottom, equals your percent number, which is your number, whatever percent they are giving you, over 100. Then what you're going to end up doing, just solving that proportion by multiplying the means and the extremes. That's going to be amount times 100 is going to be base times the percent number. Okay, so we're going to try to do that and write down what all these numbers are. So how do we recognize what is the base and the whole and all that stuff? Now the rate, the percent rate, is going to be given to you either in numbers, something like 20%. You're going to write the number part will be 20 over 100, so you're going to write it as a fraction. Or they may say what percent. When they say what percent, that means you don't know the number part, and you're going to have to write n over 100. And n is going to be your number percent, and that will be the answer if they're asking you the percent. Now, the base part is usually comes after the word of. For example, if we say 20% of 3, the number 3 is going to be your base part, the whole part. And the amount or part of it is going to be a number someplace in the sentence. And it should not be coming after of. Okay? So let's see how we can do these problems, and I'll give you some examples. Let's say somebody's asking, what is 15% of 30? So if you go back, we need to recognize what base, amount, and rate are. So let's write that. Let's say I want to know what the base is, the amount is, what the rate is. Okay? So what is 15%? 15% is simply my rate. And the amount, what is 15% of 30? Of 30. 30 comes after the word of, so it is the base. So the remaining one is going to be the amount. And what is the amount? They are saying what? So that's my unknown. Now if you go back to the equations, amount over base is number over 100. So let's write that amount over base, your percent number over 100. So if you're given the percent, it is a good idea to put that down already. 15 over 100. Then amount, which is n, over base 30. Now what are you allowed to do? You're allowed to crisscross. So that means 100 times n equals 30 times 15. Now the next step is fairly easy. When you have an unknown, which is n, you look at what number is next to it. In this case 100. Divide both sides by 100. So in this case you're supposed to take 30, multiply by 15, divide by 100, and that will simply give you 4.5. And guess what? 4.5, oh, let me take this out. I don't want to write like that. That gives you n of 4.5, and you're done with the problem. So you cross the hundreds out and you'll end up with n equals this number, which happens to be 4.5. So you have to read it back and see if it makes sense. What is 15% of 30? So we found out 15% of 30 is 4.5. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Now let's try another problem. 25% of what number is 10? So let's write the rate down first. It's 25% of what number? So what number comes after of? So that's going to be my base. And the remaining one is going to be my amount. So let's put down the proportion. The amount over the base, which is 10 over n, is going to be the rate percent, which is 25 over 100. Now let's crisscross. You're going to end up with 10 times 100 equals 25 times n. Now what am I allowed to do? Whatever is next to your unknown, which is n, divide both sides by that number. Then this is going to give you n equals 10 times 100 divided by 25. That will give you 40. Read back the problem, and the 40 is simply that number, 10 times 100 divided by 25. 25% of 40 is 10. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Now let's do a problem where we don't know the percent. 10 is what percent of 30? Now what percent? That means n percent. I don't know that. 10 is what percent of 30? 30 comes after the word of, so 30 is the base, and 10 has to be the amount. Let's write the equation. Amount over the base is n divided by 100. Let's crisscross. You're going to have 10 times 100 equals 30n. What are you allowed to do? Divide by both sides by 30, and then you're going to end up 10 times 100 divided by 30. That will give you 33.3. So n is 33.3, which happens to be this number. And let's answer that. Since they are saying what percent, that means your answer is going to be in percent. In this case, it's 33.3%.